Disruption and damage as Storm Doris blows in from the north. From snowy traffic jams to frightening flights to the downright dangerous. And there's more to come.
In Blackpool, the waves are crashing, the foam's flying off the sea as gusts of up to 70 miles an hour batter the northwest coastline.
Also this lunchtime, net migration dips despite a surge in arrivals from Romania and Bulgaria. The highest number leaving were Brits. Ian Stewart jailed for 34 years for the heinous murder of his fiancée. The judge says he remains a danger to women.
Naomi Harris for services to drama.
And Miss Moneypenny OBE, Naomi Harris, honoured at the Palace for her work in film.
This is the ITV Lunchtime News with Alistair Stewart.
Good afternoon. The winds whipped up by Doris have hit 100 miles an hour. And in the last half hour, it's been reported a woman has died in Wolverhampton in what's described as a storm-related incident. Power lines were torn down in Northern Ireland, leaving 8,000 homes without power. Flights have been cancelled at Heathrow. On the road, snow in Scotland caused the closure of the M80, and in the south, the M25 Dartford crossing has been closed. More snow is predicted for Scotland, and there are severe weather warnings across the north of England, the Midlands and East Anglia until this evening. Nick Wallace with the latest.
Sweeping into central Scotland overnight, Storm Doris left several inches of snow and the usual headaches for commuters. Drivers in Renfrewshire struggled with the conditions, and the M80 between Glasgow and Stirling was closed at Castle Carey for several hours. In Liverpool this morning, pedestrians were struggling with the high winds. Roads were closed as construction workers battled to make their sites safe, and Liverpool Port closed, citing 100-mile-an-hour winds. Storm Doris's battering of the Isle of Man briefly cut the island off, with both ferry and flight cancellations. And whilst most other airports remained open, the high winds led to a number of planes being grounded. This Iceland Air flight coming into land at Manchester had to abandon its first attempt before flying round to safely touch down at the second. There's been significant disruption on the railways this morning, with 24 of Britain's 28 train operating companies reporting delays and cancellations. Damage to power lines near St Albans in Hertfordshire left commuters to fend for themselves. Euston Station in London was completely closed shortly after this footage was taken because of overcrowding. The effects of Storm Doris will continue to be felt for the rest of the afternoon, particularly in Scotland, where snow is expected to fall into the evening. Around the rest of the country, the clear-up has begun. Fallen trees and branches need to be removed from roads, railway and power lines. But at least as far as the worst of it goes, it looks like Doris has already had her day. Nick Wallace, ITV News.
And this lunchtime, Storm Doris continues to make its way across the country. It's expected to head east through the course of the afternoon before heading into Central Europe by the end of the day. To get a sense of the situation as things stand this afternoon, our reporter Victoria Grimes is in Blackpool.
Well, they talk about being in a weather bomb, and that's certainly how it feels today here on Blackpool, such as the ferocity of the winds that are blowing off the sea here. And you'd be forgiven for thinking I'm in the middle of a snowstorm. If you see the spray, it's just flying off those waves. It's crashing here behind me. I can't actually turn to look at them, such as the force of the wind here. It's difficult to maintain this position. It feels like I'm about to blow away. And if you look behind me at these large steel sculptures, well, they're just bending lower and lower and lower. Now, this is an area that would normally be packed full of people, dog walkers, people enjoying the coastal area here. Today, it's practically deserted. We're in the peak of Storm Doris at the moment. It's expected to die off a little bit through the course of the afternoon, but the weather warnings here remain in place, and the advice is, if you don't have to travel, then don't.
Victoria Grimes in Blackpool. Suzanne Verdi is at Euston Station in central London for us. And Suzanne, the severe weather severely disrupting things where you are?
It certainly is. All trains in and out of London Euston and nearby St Pancras have been suspended because of Storm Doris. As you can tell, it's incredibly windy here, but that's nothing compared to the gales affecting some parts of the country, which are hitting 95 miles an hour. And on those grounds, Network Rail decided, for safety reasons, that they were going to make this decision because they're worried about debris on the tracks. In fact, London Midland has said the trains may resume shortly here. We just don't know when. Virgin Trains, though, are advising all passengers due to travel today to go home, basically. They say, come back tomorrow, you will get a refund on your tickets if need be. Now, also, Storm Doris is expected to peter out later today, but passengers are being warned, even when trains do resume, there will be cancellations and severe delays.
Suzanne, thank you. Damon Green is in Wallasey on Merseyside for us. So, Damon, problems not confined to the coastline. You travelled across northern England today. Just how treacherous was that?
Well, Storm Doris came ashore here on Merseyside in New Brighton about 8 o'clock this morning. Normally it's a lovely spot to come with the family for a picnic. We don't come for a picnic today. The port of Liverpool across the Mersey was closed because of gusts of winds of 100 miles an hour. Now, the wind has dropped a bit since then, but not very much. And as the wind goes inland, it affects all of the road transport. I spoke a few minutes ago to the RAC, who say at the moment their advice is not actually to avoid travelling by road, but just to be very careful. If you're travelling past a high-sided vehicle, to be aware that the wind can come out of nowhere and buffet you. There's a lot of debris on a lot of the main roads, and certainly in Liverpool itself, in the city centre, many of the main roads are closed. Walls have collapsed, branches have come off trees. My personal advice is, if you can avoid travelling today, please do. But the official advice so far is simply to be careful, and that is very good advice.
Indeed so. Damon, thank you. Extraordinary images there. Now, if you're wanting to find out more about Storm Doris, our weather presenter Alex Beresford will be taking your questions on Facebook straight after the programme. Just head to facebook.com/ITV Weather. On to other news. And net migration for the UK has fallen to the lowest level in 2 years. The latest figures show that the number of people entering the country in the immediate aftermath of the Brexit vote fell by 23,000, whilst the number of people leaving rose. Brits were the highest number on their way out. It is the first substantial drop in migration figures for more than 4 years, but it is still higher than the government's target of fewer than 100,000. Our political correspondent Carl Dinnan has more.
The signs of mass immigration have become commonplace, the public impatience with it well known. But the shape of immigration into Britain may be subtly changing. For a start, net migration has actually fallen for the first time in 4 years.
Well, we always said that we wanted to control immigration, and what these numbers demonstrate is that there is a welcome fall from the non-EU migration, so that it demonstrates that we can reduce immigration where we can control it. And I really welcome these figures.
Net migration, the difference between those arriving and those leaving, fell to 273,000 in the year to September. That's a drop of 49,000, but still way over the government's target of less than 100,000. And immigration was estimated to be nearly 600,000. This included the highest ever number of Romanians and Bulgarians at around 74,000. But there are concerns about how the labour market could be hit as migrants from earlier waves of immigration, such as Poles and Czechs, are now leaving in greater numbers than they have for 5 years. International student numbers are also down.
The reduction in the number of overseas students visiting the UK is down about 30%. Now, these are an extremely important source of income for universities. They enrich the communities. They provide excellent graduates for the UK. And to see such a reduction is very worrying.
But the figures still show how difficult it is for the government to control migration. Net migration from outside the EU, which can in theory be limited, still numbered 164,000.
Carl, lots of numbers, ebbs and flows, but can you drill down into them? What was the impact of the Brexit referendum?
Well, look, it's very tempting, isn't it, to suppose that the number of Poles and Czechs and others going home, that number rising, may have something to do with the rise of anti-immigrant sentiment and possibly to do with the collapse in the value of the pound as well. Also, it's long been thought that anti-immigrant rhetoric affects the number of students wanting to come here. But the Office for National Statistics is very, very clear on this. They say it is far too early to say whether or not the EU referendum has had an impact on long-term migration to this country. But there is a figure that I think we should look at, which is the number of EU nationals applying for residency here has doubled. And I think it's very hard to see that as anything other than a reflection of uncertainty over their status following the referendum.
Carl, thank you. The partner of the children's author Helen Bailey has been jailed for at least 34 years for murdering her and hiding her body in a cesspit. As he imposed a life sentence, the judge at St Albans Crown Court described Ian Stewart as a danger to women. Well, Chloe Keedy was at that sentencing and she joins me live now. Chloe, what else did the judge have to say?
Well, the judge said it was difficult to imagine a more heinous crime, one in which Ian Stewart spent weeks poisoning Helen Bailey before smothering her and throwing her body in a cesspit in order to get his hands on her fortune. And the judge said to Ian Stewart, "You deceived Helen's family and friends for a period of over 3 months by a calculated and callous series of lies, which meant they had to endure the anguish and misery of not knowing her whereabouts or her fate for a long time before the appalling truth emerged." Well, Ian Stewart refused to attend court today, but his son Jamie was here to hear his father's sentence handed down. And of course, this ordeal is far from over for him because police confirmed yesterday that they will be looking again at the death of his mother, Diane. That's Ian Stewart's first wife. And while police stressed that there's no reason to believe she died of anything other than natural causes, they've said it's only right and proper that they look at it again.
Chloe, thank you. Still to come, punishment and reform. The new plans to write the rehabilitation of offenders into law. And at Her Majesty's service as Naomi Harris goes from Bonn to Buckingham Palace to pick up an OBE. But first, the boss of Centrica, which owns British Gas, has warned any price cap on energy prices would have unintended consequences. The government has made it clear that it believes that the energy market is broken, but Ian Conn has told ITV News he disagrees with that view, and he has been speaking to our business editor, Joel Hills, who joins me live in the studio. What else did he have to say to you, Joel?
Well, look, as you say, the government and the regulator believe prices in the energy market are too high. The customer sort of service levels are pretty lousy. What's been interesting this morning is listening to Ian Conn and hearing how strongly he's pushing back against that. He says, look at our profits at British Gas. Look at the number of customers' complaints. Both have fallen significantly. He points at the company's price freeze, now out to August of next year. It's time to stop banging on about switching, says Ian Conn. It's easy. The market's working for customers, and a price cap, Alistair, he says, unnecessary.
I think that what we're seeing today is a highly competitive market. 50 suppliers, loads of choice, switching sites. Of course, it's competitive. Is it sustainable to have 50 suppliers in this market? I doubt it.
Still a long way off. Are we going to get that cap?
Well, he says if we do, what will happen is fixed price deals will go up and some companies will go out of business. But the government's looking at this closely. Look at British Gas's customers on standard variable tariffs. There are 5 million of them in total, 6.5 million if you include prepaid meters. Now, they're paying on average £1,044 for gas and electricity. Tariff frozen, of course, till August. But the cheapest deal on the market is £834. So if in theory, if they switched, Alistair, they could save money. Now, the government and the regulator looking at this very clearly. They're threatening to intervene. Ed Miliband, this lunchtime, says they should. The energy market, he says, was broken in 2013, and it's broken now, he tells ITV News. Imposing a temporary price cap and resetting the market made sense then and would make sense now. Now, the big picture here is that so few people are switching. 60% of households have never, ever moved supplier. That, says the government, is a sign of a broken market. Ian Conn says, have you ever considered the possibility those people are actually happy where they are?
It's a powerful argument. Joel, thank you. Now, Barclays has revealed that its profits nearly trebled last year to almost £2.2 billion. The bank says it's thanks to restructuring and a boost from its investment banking arm. Barclays has been trying to restore its reputation since a rate-fixing scandal in 2012. It's being described as the biggest shake-up in jails in a generation. A major overhaul of the justice system has been laid out today with the key message that prison governors must get inmates off drugs and into jobs. And for the first time, the need to reform offenders, as well as punish them, will be set out in law. It's projects like this one at Onley Prison in Warwickshire that the government wants to see across England and Wales. Here, inmates can complete a full-time course to become bike mechanics in the on-site cycle workshop with a guaranteed job on release.
We put people in prison, we deprive them of their liberty to punish them. But at the same time, for the sake of society and for the sake of those people, we need to make sure that when they leave prison, they leave likely to get a job with improved education, with improved health.
The Prisons and Courts Bill will give governors in England and Wales freedom over budgets for education, employment and health. Every prison will be ranked in a league table for the first time, with governors held to account if inmates reoffend or don't find work. And measures to clamp down on smuggled mobile phones will be introduced to help reduce organised crime. Ministers believe changes will transform crisis-hit prisons, but critics have questioned whether they go far enough to address the problems of overcrowding, violence and the recent spate of riots. Well, joining me here in the studio is Callum, who's there in the middle. He managed to turn his life round after spending time in jail. Also with us, Jakob Tass, the Chief Executive of NACRO, which is a charity which helps rehabilitate offenders. Jakob, you listened to that backgrounder from me. Has Liz Truss got it right this time?
I think Liz Truss has it right in terms of highlighting the importance that a prison and the offenders in it are a captive audience, and the purpose of prison should therefore be rehabilitation. I think, therefore, we commend her for coming out, changing the law to highlight this, but it's only the starting point. It's not that we haven't tried things in the past.
Let's talk about what's been tried in the past, because as I said in the introduction to you, you did something wrong, you got banged up, you've turned yourself round. What specifically happened to you in that prison experience that was a positive rather than negative? What helped you turn around?
Teachers taking the time, obviously, to invest in me and showing me new skills and actually taking the time to teach me things instead of just ticking a box and saying, yep, you're rehabilitated.
And those were people who'd come in as educators, as trainers. Did you sense that the other prison staff, the wardens, as it were, the prison officers, did they buy into that approach as well?
Some of them did and some of them didn't, but they're a bit understaffed, so it's a lot hard to, say.
He's cracked it perfectly in two. Some of them did and some of them didn't, and they're understaffed. Liz Truss has addressed the understaffing issue. Yes. Some of them didn't buy into it. Unless they do, it's a waste of time.
I think it's a collective. So we all agree, again, also government, but particularly also from a NACRO perspective, yes, it's so important to engage on an individual level. So prison guards, officers, have a real opportunity, if they had the time and the interest. We need to make sure collectively, but particularly also with organisations like NACRO, to engage with the individual. So what we were able to do with Callum in the prison he was in is to talk to him. What do you want? How can we help you change your life around? And we have been able, particularly on the transition back in society, to be able to, through the gate, help him both inside and out.
Did you sense as well that some of the people that you were mixing with and spending time with were absolutely determined to turn their backs on this, whether it was offered to them or not? They were just determined, do the time, get out there and offend again?
I think if there's real reform, then people will be able to change, but it's also down to the individual person whether they want to change or not.
So it's the system that could turn each and every inmate round, in your view?
Not each and every one, but majority.
Yes, definitely. I would totally echo that. definitely far more than we're turning around now, because as we all know, 50% come back to prison. They generate therefore more victims, more costs to society. We really have to relentlessly focus on those people who are willing to turn their lives around, work with them individually and help them for us all to be in a safer place.
Thank you very much for the thoughts on the policy, and thank you particularly for those insights from someone who's actually been through it. Thank you both.
Thank you very much. Welcome.
Finally, British actress Naomi Harris has been awarded an OBE for her services to drama. The London-born star is perhaps best known for her role as Miss Moneypenny in the latest James Bond films, but she's also been nominated for an Oscar for Best Supporting Actress for her role in the critically acclaimed film Moonlight. Nina Nana caught up with her.
Well, in between picking up nominations for the BAFTAs, the Golden Globes and, of course, the Oscars, Naomi Harris has had the small matter of an OBE to collect from Buckingham Palace, which she has just done. Congratulations, Naomi.
Thank you so much.
Shall we take a look at the medal?
Yes, let's. It's lovely and pink.
There you go. Well done. It's beautiful. Now, of course, you collected the medal this morning from your fellow Bond girl, if I can say that, the Queen.
Young and agile.
What did she have to say to you?
She asked me what I was working on next. She congratulated me on all the success with Moonlight, and she wished me all the best for the future.
What does it mean to you to be here today? It's been quite a whirlwind, hasn't it, these past few months?
It's been a real whirlwind, and it continues, because obviously tomorrow I leave for the Oscars, but this is just really phenomenal, because this is representing my country and being recognised for having made a contribution to the nation, it can't get better than that, really.
Does Bond remain a highlight, or there's been so much variety now, I suppose there's quite a lot to choose from?
No, it still remains a highlight, because it's such a special family, basically, to be part of, and I get to return as well, which is really unusual in this business, because normally you're a gypsy travelling around the world on your own, and this is an opportunity to reconnect with the same group of people, so it really does feel like a family.
Well, you've got the small matter of the Oscars to jet off for tomorrow. You may well be coming home with another medal. Okay, congratulations.
But thank you for your enthusiasm.
With Naomi Harris at Buckingham Palace.
The ever-brilliant Nina Nana. A reminder of our main story this lunchtime. Storm Doris has brought snow, wind and heavy rain across Britain. It's caused disruption on motorways and to flights. In Wolverhampton, one woman has died as a result of the weather. A full forecast follows this programme. Mary Nightingale will be here with the ITV Evening News at 6:30. But for now, from all of us here, a very good afternoon to you. Bye.